The Las Vegas Raiders just finished 10 OTA practices, and I've been sitting with everything I watched and everything I've been told coming out of that facility, and I need to be honest with you. This roster is not what most people think it is right now. Not even close. Mandatory minicamp opens June 9th, 3 days, full attendance required, no veteran privilege, no convenient absences. Everyone shows up and the evaluation clock runs at full speed. But before we get there, I want to do something I find more revealing than any single practice report or depth chart update. I want to build out the complete 53-man projection for this Raiders team right now, with everything we actually know coming out of OTAs, and I want to defend every single decision out loud. No hedging, no protecting myself by keeping everyone I like. Real cuts, real reasoning, real lines drawn in real places. Because when you force yourself through that process honestly, you learn something about a team that no highlight package will ever show you. And what I learned going through this Raiders roster surprised me in a way I wasn't fully prepared for. Let me start at quarterback because the architecture of that room is more deliberate than it looks from the outside. I'm carrying 3, Fernando Mendoza, Kirk Cousins, and Aiden O'Connell. The undrafted free agent Jacob Clark doesn't make it. And yes, I already know the O'Connell conversation is going to generate friction because $3.7 million committed to a third quarterback is a real organizational decision with real opportunity cost attached to it. That argument has legitimate weight, but here's my read on why this structure makes sense specifically for where this franchise is right now. Cousins is the operator, the experienced, system-comfortable veteran who shortens the cognitive load on everyone around him because he's run enough professional offenses to stop making the preventable mistakes. O'Connell behind him gives you actual NFL starting reps on the depth chart, which matters more than people typically credit when you're projecting for a full season's worth of injury probability. And Mendoza is the whole point. He's the quarterback this organization is genuinely building toward, which means every resource position around him, including a backup with real game experience, is a long-term investment in the player they believe becomes their franchise cornerstone. 3 quarterbacks because of 1. That logic is coherent, and I'm comfortable defending it. Running back. 4 players, and the only comment I'll make about Ashton Jeanty before moving on is this. He exists in a completely different category from every other decision in this backfield. He is the offensive identity. The personnel decisions around him are about surrounding support, not genuine competition for a role. Mike Washington Jr. was drafted because his athletic profile earned an organizational investment, and that investment almost always converts into a roster spot in the first year. Roman Hemby holds the 3rd position over Chris Collier and Dylan Lobb, and the reason is concrete rather than abstract. Pass protection. Kubiak's scheme regularly stress tests running backs in blitz pickup situations, and Hemby's ability to read pressure and handle contact and protection is the most developed option among those alternatives. That's not a preference, it's a schematic requirement. And Connor Hayward as the fullback gives this team tight end insurance without consuming a dedicated tight end spot on the 53. That's smart resource management. 6 wide receivers make this roster: Tucker, Naylor, and Beck. Those evaluations are stable enough that relitigating them isn't a productive use of time. Malik Benson is an easy decision, and I want to say something specific about him because what's come out of OTA practice reports isn't the usual spring noise. What's been reported isn't one exceptional day that everyone latched onto. It's been the continuity of it, the release technique, the route precision, the way his game actually connects to what Kubiak wants from that position in this system. Those qualities have shown up across multiple practices in a row. And that distinction matters enormously. One great OTA session is a fluke. Good sessions across 10 consecutive practices is a pattern, and patterns are what honest roster evaluations get built on. Derek Young makes it because the track background, the 4.4 speed, the size, and the early returns as a legitimate deep threat are too functionally valuable to release. And Dante Thornton Jr. holds the 6th spot, with one significant caveat I'm not going to minimize. The red non-contact jersey he was spotted in on June 3rd is something I'm actively monitoring. It's not panic, but it requires watching through minicamp before I feel comfortable treating that spot as fully settled. Tight ends. 3, plus Hayward as the hybrid piece I've already placed. Brock Bowers doesn't need words. If you've watched this offense operate with Bowers in space against favorable coverage, you understand what he means to Kubiak's entire schematic vision. Michael Mayer at 2nd tight end brings blocking reliability in the run game alongside enough receiving utility to stay active. Ian Thomas holds the 3rd spot for the same structural reason. The run blocking dimension he provides is exactly the kind of functional depth this offense needs at that position. Patrick Gurd doesn't survive the initial cut, and I'm watching Alberto closely. there are some organizational ties to Kubiak's background that could influence how that evaluation develops. But Thomas holds the position until I see something that genuinely displaces him. The offensive line. This is where I need to slow everything down, because what this front office and coaching staff have done to this unit across a single offseason is one of the most structurally significant position group transformations anywhere in the league this spring, and the major headlines have badly underreported it. 9 players in my projection: Colt Miller at left tackle, Spencer Burford at left guard. He held the first team spot throughout the entire OTA window, and the physical, aggressive style he brings is a direct match for what Kubiak's run-blocking scheme demands from that guard position specifically. Tyler Linderbaum at center, and I'll say this without qualification. This was the single best individual roster move this franchise made in the entire offseason. Not the most expensive, not the highest profile, the best, because what Linderbaum provides goes beyond the physical evaluation. The pre-snap communication, the protection call adjustments, the ability to keep an entire offensive line thinking correctly against sophisticated defensive fronts before the ball is even snapped. That's the organizational infrastructure this offense was missing and desperately needed. JPJ at right guard, DJ Glaze at right tackle, though I want to flag that the competition with Trey Zone has been genuinely closer through OTAs than my expectations coming in, and that evaluation is worth following carefully through minicamp. Jordan Meredith, Caleb Rogers, Charles Grant, and Zune complete the 9. What matters about this group collectively is cross-positional versatility, multiple players capable of operating effectively at multiple spots, which means injuries don't collapse this unit the way they've damaged this franchise in recent memory. That built-in structural resilience is what real organizational construction looks like in practice. Defensive tackles, 6 players, and I want to be direct about one of them specifically because I think he's the most undervalued player on this entire roster: Adam Butler. Interior pass rusher, genuinely disruptive on critical downs, and with Rob Leonard now running this defense, Butler operates in cleaner single coverage scenarios more consistently than he's experienced in Las Vegas, which plays directly into what makes him effective. He has been operating in the wrong environment for his skill set. Leonard puts him in the right one. Jonah Laulu carries real questions, but the evaluation data the coaching staff has accumulated on him carries real weight too, and that organizational conviction influences roster decisions in ways that outside projections have to account for. JJ Pagas and Tonka Hemingway, both drafted last cycle, both still in legitimate developmental windows, both worth retaining in a Leonard scheme that might actually surface what they're capable of in ways previous defensive systems didn't. Thomas Booker at $3.5 million holds his spot until something shifts decisively. Brandon Cleveland at 6. Organizational investment in a draft pick almost always produces a roster spot unless something goes materially wrong, and Cleveland gives you a developmental body at a position that needs genuine depth. The hardest omission here is Benito Jones, and I want to be explicit about it. The coaching connections are real. Both Kenyon Jackson and Rob Leonard have genuine familiarity with him, and those relationships carry weight in close roster decisions, but his OTA participation has been too limited to build a reliable evaluation case. He is the first player I add back when a defensive tackle spot opens. That's not a hedge. That's a priority. 5 defensive ends, Max Crosby and Tyree Wilson as your starters. That evaluation requires no defense. Byron Crawford brings pass rush instinct and elite length that Leonard specifically knows how to develop and deploy, and that coaching familiarity accelerates the timeline on what Crawford becomes in this system. Malcolm Coons makes it, and then Kean Sloan, the undrafted free agent. And I want to give this the real attention it deserves, rather than treating it as a footnote. The practice reports out of OTAs on Sloan have been both consistent and specific in ways that matter. The motor stands out from everyone around him. The hybrid versatility, functioning incredibly in coverage while also generating legitimate pass rush pressure, is exactly the kind of attribute combination defensive coordinators design specific game week packages around when they have a player who can execute it at a reliable level. Sloan looks like someone the Raiders discovered in a draft pool most organizations dismissed. If the coaching staff commits real developmental time to him, the ceiling is meaningful. He's ahead of Jafari Harvey on this projection, and the OTA evidence is the reason that call gets made. Linebackers, 5 players. Key Walker and Nakobe Dean as your starting pair. And I want to address the Dean situation honestly because the OTA absences generated more external noise than the situation internally warrants. Every absence has been excused. Kubiak's communications have been explicitly unconcerned. When you sign a player to a 3-year, $36 million contract, the organizational conviction embedded in that decision doesn't dissolve over missed spring practices. Dean will be ready when the games count. Tommy Eichenberg completes the top 3. Cody Lindenberg is genuinely interesting to me. He received meaningful starting reps alongside Walker while Dean was out, and for a 7th-round pick to handle that responsibility without the operation visibly degrading is real positive evidence. You notice those things, and I noticed this. Shea Gunalobi as the 5th. Primarily on the basis of special teams value, in a group with enough depth to absorb that kind of roster construction at the bottom end. Corners, 5 players. Eric Stokes is locked in after the extension, and that conversation is finished. Jermaine McCoy remains the most genuinely compelling developmental story on this entire roster, and the trajectory of his knee recovery has continued trending positively in a consistent direction. The anticipation around what he becomes when fully healthy isn't hype manufactured from nowhere. It's based on what he's shown when he's been able to operate. Taron Johnson showed up for the final 4 OTA sessions, and by all reports looked sharp. 4 quality days of work that almost certainly helped his contract standing more than anything his representation could have produced at the negotiating table. Zeke Masses, the rookie, makes the initial 53. Darian Porter rounds out the 5. Damarian Richardson, 4th-round pick, legitimate evaluation backing, is the toughest corner omission in this entire projection, and he's directly in the next 5 conversation, but Porter holds the spot right now. 4 safeties. Trevon Stokes at free safety. The 2nd-round selection carrying significant responsibility in this secondary, and every OTA report suggests he's processing that expanded role with more composure than you'd typically project onto a player at his developmental stage. Jeremy Chin at strong safety, and the nickel linebacker hybrid role Leonard is constructing specifically around Chin's skill set might genuinely produce the most effective version of Chin we've seen across his entire NFL career. Think about that seriously for a moment, because the previous versions of Chin have already been useful. Isaiah Palau brings experience and functional reliability at a contract number that justifies the spot. And Dalton Johnson in the 4th safety slot. The Raiders traded up to take him in the 5th round, and organizational behavior of that nature communicates conviction that deserves genuine weight in any projection that's trying to be honest. Special teams, Matt Gay at kicker. The Joe Camillus organizational connection provides institutional backing that matters in roster competition. And until Matsuzawa wins the job decisively through live training camp reps and preseason performance, demonstrated NFL production holds the position over theoretical upside from an unproven challenger. A J. Cole at punter. No real competition, no significant discussion required. Alex Ward at long snapper. Tyler Zansky needs to actually win that job in live competition before Ward loses it, and we haven't seen sufficient evidence of that outcome materializing yet. Final count lands at 53 players, and the next 5 I'd be calling the moment any spot opens. Benito Jones at the top of that list without hesitation, followed by Dylan Laub, Cameron McGrone, Damarian Richardson, and Tristan McCullough. Those are real players, not filler names. That matters. But here's the thing I actually want you to walk away with from everything we just went through, because the individual roster decisions are only part of what this exercise is actually about. Going through a complete 53-man projection position by position tells you something qualitative about a franchise that statistics and transactions don't communicate directly. And here's what I felt going through this Raiders roster. The genuinely difficult decisions were about choosing between good players who didn't fit, not about managing depth charts full of bodies kept out of organizational necessity. Those are completely different psychological exercises. For years, the Raiders were making roster decisions from a position of scarcity, choosing which inadequate player to retain at a position of genuine weakness because there was no real alternative. That's a franchise without options. What I experienced going through this projection was something structurally different. A team where legitimate competition exists at multiple positions simultaneously, where the depth chart carries real players throughout, where the coaching staff has actual choices rather than theoretical ones. Spytek and Kubiak built that in one offseason. That is not a small accomplishment. Mandatory minicamp opens June 9th. 3 days, full roster, no exits permitted. We get our first real look at Nakobe Dean competing in team settings. We see where the Taron Johnson contract situation actually stands after those 4 quality OTA sessions. We get the clearest window yet into how the Cousins-Mendoza developmental dynamic is genuinely being managed day to day inside that building. And when June 11th closes, this organization will have more complete evaluation data on this roster than at any point since Kubiak and Spytek took over this program. Then training camp, joint sessions against the Texans, preseason games, and the final push toward the August 30th cutdown. This team is coming into focus in a way that I don't think the outside conversation has fully registered yet. And what I see when I look at this 53-man projection decision by decision, position by position, no hedging, is a franchise that finally has the structural foundation to absorb adversity without collapsing under it. That capacity, that built-in resilience, is worth more than any single headline acquisition. It is how you build something that outlasts one good season and becomes something real.